I still remember the heat of that day, not from the sun, but from the way their laughter burned through me. It was my graduation day, the moment I had worked toward for years. I was the first in my family to pursue something they didn't understand: environmental design. While my cousins were becoming lawyers, doctors, or sliding comfortably into the family accounting firm, I had chosen a different path, one that brought me joy even if it made me the family's favorite punchline. The ceremony was held in an open-air amphitheater in upstate New York. I designed the stage backdrop myself as part of a student project, but of course no one in my family cared enough to ask. I scanned the crowd for them. When my name was called, I had earned a departmental award, something only one graduate received each year. But my parents weren't clapping. My mother looked down at her phone. My father's arms were crossed. And my older brother, Mark. He was whispering something to our cousin Derek, then they both chuckled. Later, during the family lunch, it got worse. "I just don't get why you wasted 4 years on trees and drawings," Mark said as he bit into his sandwich. "Designing parks," my father added with a sneer. "That's what you went into debt for." I tried to smile through it. I didn't want to make a scene, but the shame was unbearable. I felt like I was 10 years old again, explaining why I liked art more than math. Only now the stakes were higher and the humiliation more public. They took a group photo one without me. I had stepped away to take a call from a professor. When I returned, they were already packing up. No one noticed. No one waited. I drove back to my small off-campus apartment that evening, alone, diploma in hand, and cried until I couldn't feel my face. And before you judge how this story ends, stay with me. Because what they didn't know, what no one in my family saw coming, was that the quiet girl they ignored would one day hold the power to decide everything. There's a part of this story they never expected, and if you stay through to the end, you'll see why. I didn't talk about that day for a long time. I buried it under work projects and relentless ambition. I found my first job out west in Oregon, working with a firm that believed in green infrastructure and community design. I took on city contracts, redesigned a flood-prone park, helped a school district create outdoor classrooms. No one in my family ever asked what I was doing. At some point, the texts stopped. Birthday cards stopped. Christmas became a group email chain I was rarely included on. I got used to it. The silence was cold at first, but eventually, it became peace. I poured my time and energy into the work. It didn't feel like success at the time, it felt like survival. One project led to another. I built a reputation. Eventually, I started my own studio, Hartwell Urban, named after the small town my grandmother grew up in. I built something out of nothing, quietly, without fanfare, without family. Years passed, until one Thursday morning, rainy gray like most Pacific Northwest mornings, I received an email. Subject line: "Can we talk?" It was from Mark. I stared at it for a long time. My hand hovered over the delete key, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe bitterness, stopped me. I opened it. "Hey, long time. I know this is weird, but we're in trouble. Dad's sick. Mom doesn't know what to do. We're losing the house. I know you're busy, but we could really use your help. Please, call me. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a request. Like I was a vending machine you punch when it doesn't spit out what you want fast enough." I sat there, frozen. The very people who made me feel invisible were now reaching out, not to say sorry, not to reconnect, but because they needed something. And the worst part, a part of me wanted to say yes, because despite everything, I still remembered birthdays. I still knew the smell of my mother's kitchen. I still loved them. But could I forgive them? Did I owe them anything? That question haunted me for days. I waited 3 days before replying to Mark's email. I needed time not just to think, but to feel. Every line he wrote scratched open old wounds that had never quite healed. I wasn't the kind of person who held grudges, but I wasn't the same person they remembered either. When I finally responded, I kept it simple. "I got your message. I'm sorry to hear about Dad. I hope he's getting the care he needs. What's going on with the house?" The reply came within the hour. as if they were just sitting there refreshing their inbox. We're behind on the mortgage. A few years back, Dad refinanced to help Mark with his business. Then the pandemic hit and they never caught up. Now the bank's moving to foreclose. They're not listening to payment plans. We're desperate. I thought maybe with your success, that phrase, with your success, as if it had just happened overnight, as if they hadn't all actively ignored it for years. I agreed to a call not out of obligation, but because I wanted to hear the tone in their voices. I needed to know if this was genuine. It was a Sunday. I sat in my office, the afternoon sun pouring across my desk as the Zoom call rang. When the screen loaded, it wasn't just Mark. It was my mother, and my father, pale, thin, sitting off to the side, a shadow of the man who once laughed at my dreams. "Emma," my mother said, "you look, well." It was the kind of compliment wrapped in distance. My father didn't say anything. He just stared. Mark launched into logistics interest rates bank notices a final window before foreclosure. Then he pivoted. "We wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. You've done well, and this is still the family home. The family home. The same one where they held parties without inviting me. Where my old bedroom was turned into a storage space for Dad's fishing gear. Where the last time I visited, there wasn't a single photo of me on the walls. I need time to think," I said. Mark nodded, but I saw the impatience. The same look he used to give me as kids when I didn't know the punchline to his jokes. That night, I dug out the photo album I kept tucked away, a collection of prints I'd saved over the years. Most were from college moments no one else captured. Me on the steps of the design building, me holding my first blueprint, me alone. On the final page was the graduation photo, the one I asked a stranger to take since my family never did. In it, I'm smiling, but the smile doesn't reach my eyes. I sat with it a long time, let myself feel it all over again. Then I made my decision. The next morning, I emailed Mark. "I'm willing to help, but I want to see the full financials first. I'll need access to any documents tied to the loan." His reply was curt. I thought this was about family, not a business transaction. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I got a package. Inside copies of the mortgage paperwork bank statements. And something else. A document showing a cash-out refinance 5 years ago over $200,000 taken out of the house's equity. I flipped through confused. What had they done with the money? Then I found the wire transfer to a business account. Mark's business account. He had taken the money, not for an emergency, not to fix the house, but to start a boutique auto restoration company, something he'd bragged about at Christmases I was never invited to. And it had failed. Now the house was collateral damage. I called him. "Mark," I said, "you didn't mention the refinance was for your business." There was a pause. "Well, yeah, but it was still for the family. I wanted to create something. Legacy." "Legacy?" I asked. "You mocked mine. You told me I was wasting my life." He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Come on, Emma. That was ages ago. No apology. No regret. Just dismissal." I realized then that they weren't reaching out because they had changed. They were reaching out because they had no other options. And they still didn't see me. Not really. Not as someone who had worked, built, sacrificed. Just someone who owed them something. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I just felt tired, like carrying a weight I hadn't realized was still strapped to my back. That night, I opened a folder labeled "What They Never Saw." It had every design I'd ever submitted for city projects, every award press clipping, even the grant I won last year to build a sustainable housing model for veterans. Things they never asked about, things they never thought I was capable of. And suddenly, I didn't feel tired anymore. I felt focused. I wish I could tell you that after that call with Mark, I found peace, that recognizing their manipulation gave me closure. But the truth, it broke something, not because they were still the same. I had accepted that long ago, but because for the briefest of moments, I'd hoped. I'd hoped that time had changed them, that the boy who once crumpled up my art portfolio and tossed it in the fire at Thanksgiving would show even a flicker of remorse, That the mother who used to compare me to real professionals like my cousins might just once say she was proud. That my father who laughed when I won a city planning award and said, "So, you draw sidewalks," now would acknowledge what I'd become. But they hadn't changed. They just needed me. And when I said I'd think about it when I asked for transparency, they recoiled, as if I was the selfish one. It sent me spiraling in a way I wasn't prepared for. Work became harder. I missed a meeting with a municipal board I'd never missed before. I forgot a site inspection. My assistant Miriam quietly asked me if I was okay. "I'm fine," I lied. But I wasn't. I was angry. I was hurt. And underneath all of that, I was grieving a family that never really existed, at least not the way I wanted it to. That week, I drove to the coast, a stretch of Oregon shoreline I always went to when things got too loud inside my head. I sat in the sand, wrapped in a wool coat, wind clawing at my face, and I remembered something. It was senior year of high school. I had been accepted into a prestigious design summer program at Cornell. I came home holding the acceptance letter like it was gold. I was breathless, nervous, excited. My mom read it silently at the kitchen table. Then she set it down and said, "You know your cousin Ben just got into Stanford pre-law. Now that's impressive." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. That summer, instead of going to Ithaca, I stayed home and worked at the town's hardware store to save money. I told everyone it was my choice. It wasn't. No one helped. No one believed it mattered. I thought I had buried that memory. But now it sat beside me like an old ghost, cold, familiar, and patient. Later that night, I called Miriam. "Can you take over the city briefing tomorrow?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "Emma, take the time you need. You always carry everyone else. Let someone carry the project for a while." That sentence stuck with me, because I had always carried things, quietly, alone, my dreams, my pain, my victories. My family had never been there for any of it, and now they were asking me to carry them. 3 days later, I got a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was tight measured, the tone she used when trying to seem composed. "Emma, I just think it's important to remember who we are to each other. This isn't about blame. We're a family. Families help each other. If you let bitterness keep you from doing the right thing, I don't know how you'll live with that." I played it twice, then deleted it. She hadn't said sorry, not once. She hadn't asked how I was, what I'd been doing, whether I was okay. Just a reminder that I would be the one to blame if I didn't comply. The house was already posted for auction. I found the notice online. A local bank had scheduled the sale for the following month, and suddenly I realized something. They didn't just want money. They wanted rescue without reflection. They wanted me to fix what they'd broken without ever acknowledging that I'd been broken too. That wasn't help. That was history repeating itself. I sat in my studio late one night past midnight, lights low. On my desk was a photo, a candid shot someone had taken of me at a community dedication last year. Behind me, the park, I designed a project that had taken 3 years and countless fights with the city board. In the photo, I was smiling, genuine, tired, proud. No one in my family had ever seen that park. No one had ever asked. But hundreds of kids now had a safe space to play. Dozens of seniors had benches and shaded walking paths. I had done something real, and it hit me like a wave. I didn't need to prove myself to people who had already made up their minds. I didn't need to keep begging them to see me. They never would. And yet the thought of them losing the house, my childhood home, still stung. Not for them, but for the memories that should have been. For the girl who once stared out her bedroom window, dreaming of cities she would someday design. That house was her prison, and maybe it needed to fall. Maybe letting it go was the only way I could ever be free. The decision came not in a burst of anger or clarity, but quietly, like an incoming tide, brushing away old footprints. I sat in the garden behind my office, a small space I had personally landscaped with native plants, pollinator pathways, and a recycled water feature. It was a small living testament to the life I had built. No one else knew how much it meant to me, but I did. That morning, I had received a second voicemail from my brother. Emma, I know you're upset, but you've done well. You can afford to help. This is about family. If the house goes, Mom will never recover. Dad's not saying anything, but he's ashamed. And I'm asking you, please, help us. Not once had he said I'm sorry. Not once had he acknowledged what they had done, and more importantly, what they hadn't done. I opened my laptop and wrote a simple email. Mark, I've thought about your request, and I need to be clear. This isn't about money. It's about how you've treated me for years, about the silence, about graduation, about pretending I didn't exist. You didn't check in when I moved cross-country. You didn't come when I opened my firm. You didn't respond to press features or invitations. Now you want my help not because you see me, but because you need something. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I won't be helping with the mortgage. You'll need to find another way. I sat with it a long time before hitting send. When I did, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. That night, I expected silence, but Mark replied within the hour. Wow. So that's it. You've changed, and not in a good way. Enjoy your perfect little life, Emma. I hope it keeps you warm. There it was, the guilt grenade, the reminder that in our family boundaries were betrayal. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. A week passed, then 2. The phone didn't ring. My mother didn't call. Not even a terse voicemail this time. The house auction went forward. I tracked it quietly online. It sold to a development group that specialized in green retrofits. The irony wasn't lost on me. A few days later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting my father's. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. We lost the house. I hope it was worth it. No salutation, no signature, no acknowledgement of my humanity, no reflection on their part, just the final note in a decades-long symphony of dismissal. That night, I cried. Not because I regretted my decision, but because I had finally accepted that I would never get the apology I deserved. That the parents I wished for existed only in my hopes, not in reality. That letting go of the house wasn't just letting go of wood and shingles. It was letting go of a dream I had carried since childhood, that if I worked hard enough, loved quietly enough, succeeded brilliantly enough, they would see me. 2 months later, I was invited to speak at a statewide urban redevelopment conference. They wanted me to keynote. Me, the girl they once laughed at for sketching imaginary cities in the margins of her notebooks. I stood before a crowd of 500 that night under warm lights in a historic theater in Salem. I wore a gray suit I'd tailored myself. My name flashed on the screen behind me. As I spoke about sustainable design, emotional memory in public spaces, and how our surroundings shape identity, I noticed something strange. I wasn't nervous, because I had nothing to prove. Not anymore. After the event, a woman in her 50s came up to me. "You don't know me," she said, "but I read about the park you built in Silverton. My grandson uses a wheelchair." That space. It changed his life. She touched her chest. "You changed his life." I smiled, genuinely moved, and in that moment I realized something. I had become the person I needed, not just for me, but for others. Not through revenge, not through bitterness, but through quiet resilience. The next morning I walked through a neighborhood I was redesigning. It was a neglected area that had once been full of color and community before neglect, and politics drained it. I was helping bring it back with gardens, gathering spaces, accessible pathways. A boy on a scooter passed me, waved. "Thanks for the trees," he called. I laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free, not from them, but from the version of myself that still wanted their approval. She was gone now, and in her place stood someone stronger. Some victories don't arrive with fanfare. They slip in like early morning light, gentle, steady, and impossible to ignore once you've felt them. It was early spring when the letter arrived. Heavy, cream-colored paper, embossed seal. I thought it was another donor letter or bureaucratic formality until I saw the return address office of the Governor State of Oregon. I opened it slowly. Inside was an official invitation the governor's office was awarding a Civic Impact Medal to 5 individuals across the state for transformative public works and community service. My name was one of them. I read the letter 3 times before setting it down, not because I didn't believe it, but because I needed to feel it, fully. This time, no one had to give me permission to be proud. This time, I didn't forward the news to my family, hoping for a reply that would never come. Instead, I framed the letter and hung it near the blueprint of the Silverton Park, the first park I ever designed solo. The ceremony was held in Salem's state capitol building, marble pillars, tall windows, and a sense of history that seemed to lean in and listen. I didn't tell anyone I was going. No +1, no Instagram post. Just me in a navy dress I bought years ago and never had the courage to wear. When they called my name, I stepped onto the stage to the quiet, respectful applause of a room full of strangers who somehow saw me more clearly than my own family ever had. The governor shook my hand and whispered, "You've made Oregon better." Thank you. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But I will remember that moment for the rest of my life, because for once I was being recognized, not in spite of who I was, but because of it. A week later, something unexpected happened. I was asked to consult on a new affordable housing project just outside Albany, a once-abandoned factory lot being converted into livable community space. The developer, the same firm that bought my family's foreclosed home, it stopped me in my tracks. I stared at the email for a long time. Could I walk back into that story? Could I be part of the reinvention of something tied so tightly to my own hurt? I said yes. Not for them. For me. The site visit happened on a Tuesday. Cold wind, blue sky, the scent of tilled earth and wet concrete. As I walked the lot with the planning team, I paused outside what used to be our front porch. It had already been stripped down the vinyl siding, removed the rose bush my mom planted pulled up. The porch swing was gone. So was the bitterness. I closed my eyes and imagined something new: raised garden beds, accessible ramps, communal picnic tables, families laughing in a space once haunted by silence. And in that moment, I knew. I had taken something broken, and without rage, without revenge, I had turned it into possibility. Later that month, an article ran in the Oregonian once foreclosed home becomes hub for healing. Hartwell Urban Leads Project. It included a photo of me standing in front of the redesigned structure, arms crossed, smiling. A colleague clipped the article and mailed it to the office where it now sits framed by my desk. I didn't hear from my family. I didn't need to. The absence no longer felt like a hole. It felt like space I had filled myself. One afternoon, a young woman came to the office. She wore worn sneakers and had a folder tucked under her arm. "Hi," she said shyly. "You don't know me, but I followed your work. I'm applying to design school. I was wondering if you'd look at my portfolio." I invited her in. She pulled out sketches raw, sincere, full of soul. I thought maybe she said eyes hopeful if someone like you made it, maybe I could too. I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a reflection of my younger self, not broken, not bitter, but blooming. I wrote her a recommendation letter that evening. Recognition comes in many forms. Sometimes it's a medal, sometimes it's an article, sometimes it's a child on a scooter yelling, "Thanks for the trees." But the deepest kind comes when you look in the mirror and no longer need to explain who you are, even to yourself. The seasons turned again. The coastal rains gave way to softer skies. The trees outside my window at the studio, the ones I planted 5 years ago, had grown tall, casting dappled shadows across my desk by afternoon. Some days, I still think about them. My family. It doesn't come with anger anymore, just a quiet ache. The kind that hums beneath the skin but no longer stops your breath. I think about my mother in the kitchen humming as she baked, never once asking me about the things I truly loved. I think about my father in his chair by the fireplace nodding at football scores, but never glancing at the awards I mailed home. I think about Mark, older brother Golden Child, who once told a room full of relatives that I made pretty playgrounds while I stood 6 feet away. And I think about that house, our house. or what used to be. Now a community center for single mothers and their children with a mural painted across what was once the garage. It reads, "New roots, same soil." I helped design that mural. I didn't tell the team what that house meant to me. I didn't need to. The roots were mine. But what grew, I gave freely. Because healing isn't erasure. It's reclamation. I sometimes wonder what they tell themselves now. Do they believe I turned cold? Do they think I abandoned them? Maybe. Or maybe they've just moved on, as people often do when they've never had to account for their actions. But I no longer wait for apologies. I no longer rehearse conversations in the shower or fall asleep drafting emails I'll never send. That version of me, hungry for acknowledgement, desperate to be seen, she's resting now. In her place stands a woman who knows her worth. Not because someone gave her permission, but because she fought for it quietly again and again until the noise faded and only truth remained. Last week I received a package at the office. No name, no note. Just a small wooden box, hand-carved. Inside was a photo, my graduation day. But this time, it wasn't the photo I took. It was one I'd never seen before. Me standing on stage, accepting my award. In the background, blurred but unmistakable, was my father, hands in his lap, looking straight at me. And for the first time, I wasn't sure what he was thinking. Regret, pride, discomfort. I may never know. But I framed it anyway. Not because I needed him to be proud, but because I had learned to stand tall even when no one clapped. That photo to me is proof I've always been enough, even when no one said so. To anyone listening who has ever been overlooked by their own family, who was told they were too sensitive, too different, or not what we expected, I want you to hear this. You don't have to carry the weight of their silence forever. You don't have to prove your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you and success. It isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in a community park, a child's thank you, a student's portfolio. Sometimes it's in choosing peace over permission. So here's my question to you. What would your life look like if you stopped asking to be seen and simply built something worth seeing? Not for revenge, not for applause, but for the person you were always meant to become. That's what I did, and I've never looked back. If this story stirred something in you, you're not alone. We've built an entire collection of real, raw stories, just like this: quiet strength, deep wounds, and the moment someone finally stood up. Click the playlist on screen to continue the journey. These aren't just stories, they're mirrors.